it's very easy in this moment to be and feel nihilistic. And I don't want to take that away from any of us. I'll be honest, I don't feel great about the world every day. I don't feel great about our prospects for victory every single day. But if I don't fundamentally believe that something better is just around the corner and that we can build it, then it does feel like we're running in a hamster wheel, right? So the way I get out of the hamster wheel is by reimagining what is it that I would put in place of what it is that we are doing right now. And that is what keeps me going every single day. I have to be super honest. It's the thing that I force myself to think about first thing when I open my eyes, and it's what I fall asleep thinking about as well. And I center myself there, Chuck, because frankly, I don't see how we get through this without clarity about what we're trying to build and who it's going to take. And that kind of discomfort is welcomed. I wanted this book to be exactly what you said, a handbook and a manual that we can put in our knapsack as we take these next very uncertain steps. It's a book that I wish I had when I was coming up as an organizer. It's a book that I hope people build off of, right? This isn't meant to be the end all be all. I hate to disappoint y'all. It's not the story of Black Lives Matter. And in fact, I don't really talk that much about Black Lives Matter in the book. And I did that on purpose. There is not one story of this movement, but we each have a unique story to tell about how we got here and what we want to do about it. And the way that I came into this work was really having my mentors say to me, in order for you to be effective, you have to understand exactly how you got to this point. What were the conditions around you that shaped you? How were you yourself shaping conditions, right? And what does that picture tell us about what's going on around us and why? Who's responsible, right? And I think we do that in this book. I talk about kind of my childhood, but I'm 39 years old. I still have a lot of life to live, God willing. But I don't do that to be like, oh, in my 39 years have been so interesting. They really haven't. But I do it so that we have practice, each of us, in not just saying, well, I grew up in this place and my parents were like this, and then I went to this school and then I did this thing. But in the book, I really contextualize my own experiences with what is happening around me. I took some time to really think about the things that shaped me. How did I come to know the things that I know? And I wanted to do that, Chuck, because frankly, I think sometimes with people who we call leaders, we assume, right, that there's some special potion or tonic that people take. We assume that some people are anointed and other people are not. And I really just wanted to break open that that's just BS, right? Like literally what catapults anybody into action is a sense that things are deeply unfair, either for yourself or for other people, and that you want that to change. And so I try to tell the story in the first book about how that awakening happened for me. I remember seeing my mom, feeling and knowing that she was a superhero in my life, but also having the deep sense that there were things preventing her from reaching her wildest dreams. Even as a person who believed she could do anything she wanted, she was super, super clear that there were barriers in front of her. And so she was always creative about how to get around those barriers. I grew up with a deep sense of feeling like it's so unfair that those barriers are there. You deserve the world. You are somebody who gives people the world, so you deserve that too. And it took me a while, and you hear about this in the book, of how to make sense of those barriers for my mom and how they translated into my life. In the book, I talk a lot about how popular culture shaped me. Yes, I have university degrees and I've studied a bunch of theories and I've studied social movements and I'm trained in sociology and anthropology and all of that. But where all this stuff comes alive for me, frankly, is being shaped by MTV, back when MTV was political, like political on the progressive side, and watching music videos where I learned about the fall of the Berlin Wall from Jesus Jones's music video called Right Here, Right Now, which is still one of my favorite songs in the world. I learned about, you know, racism and the challenges with the Catholic Church through Madonna's Like a Prayer video. You know, I learned about the AIDS crisis and famine in Sudan, and I learned about all these things through popular culture. And then I would ask, like, well, what is that? And I do more work to try to understand the context around it.
In that session, it was right after Trump was elected. It was very shortly after that. And you said that I'm really trying to figure out how we're going to move from what we've been engaged in, which is a struggle against neoliberalism, to a struggle against neo-fascism. And here we are 4 years later. In fact, at this moment where we're having to do both at the same time. You know, that, and I'm wondering what you've learned in this past 4 years, or what's even happening right immediately now that makes you think about how we go about doing both of these things at the same time. You know, that how we go about engaging in the power that that keeps us from moving to this fascist state where Trump has its head, and also emerging from this next election, not just back to Clintonian neoliberalism.
Scott Nakagawa from the Change Lab wrote an article recently about the rising anti-Asian sentiment that has become a part of this moment, and how to make sense of it and what it means for our movements. And one of the things that he said, which has stuck with me in a powerful, profound way, is he said something to the degree of, well, as we were fighting the kind of the ravaging of the state, right, that essentially keeps our communities without the things that we need to live well. That is essentially neoliberalism, right? It's like a very market-based ideology. He said, now we're also in a fight for the state. And we're in a dynamic where right now what is happening is a dissolution of the state. When we look at what people are fearful of in November, I mean, just this week, the president said that he basically, for all intents and purposes, considers elections, right, to be a sham. I don't know about you.
Appoint a Supreme Court justice to, you know, uphold what his taking the election.
Yeah, I mean, I want to be super clear. If a red flag hasn't been raised for you yet, that should raise a flag to you. Because essentially what he's doing is he's saying, I'm ready to dismantle the way that things are right now, where for all intents and purposes, symbolic or not, you think and feel like you get some kind of say over who gets to represent you. He's saying that whole system is BS. And the reason he's saying that is not because he has some deep critique of neoliberal democracy. It's because he wants to change how power functions. And so for us, we are now in a really unique position of having to fight to preserve, right, this thing that we also need to transform. And that is the thing that I think we haven't fully wrapped our heads around yet. It's the thing that I think probably was rattling around in my spirit when we were talking about this a few years ago, but it was so clearly articulated by Scott that it helped me at least think about what we are doing differently and what we need to be doing differently. One of the things that we talk about, and we talk about this in the book too, is that, you know, for all intents and purposes, every category that has been constructed is constructed strategically. And so in a lot of ways, I think it's important for us to also understand that Black is no better than anything else. We are not in a project of oppression Olympics. Nobody wants to be the most oppressed. Facts. And one of the things that Blackness as a unique construction does is it allows everyone to choose where they belong, as well as be categorized. So this is the phenomenon that we, of course, deal with, where it's not just white folks that are anti-Black, right? Anti-Blackness is exhibited in Black communities, and it's exhibited in other communities of color, and it's exhibited in Indigenous communities, not because people are mean, but because the way that power operates, right? We have allowed for, and Blackness is constructed in such a way where the farther you are from Black, the better off you think you can be. The closer you are to white, right? The more power you can amass. This is not even any longer like the elites have power at the expense of everybody else. We're moving towards the Trump family and friends have power at the exclusion of everybody else, even other elites that he's not down for.
Right.
Okay? We don't want that. And I think that's something we could probably all agree on at this point. So what do? We have to build bigger and stronger. And I'm not going to adopt the Biden campaign Build Back Better thing because I just actually hate that slogan. But I will say that we have to be able to show that there's something better on the other side. And part of where that comes from, I think, is creating multiple entry points for more and more people to be able to be connected with one another and make decisions together. I think that is deeply, deeply important. That's different than like bipartisanship and all of that nonsense. It's really actually more so like, how do we build the kinds of communities, right, that show how dependent we are on each other to survive and how we can all thrive together rather than kind of suck the life force out of each other.
This COVID epidemic, you know, along with climate warming, the fires, you know, if there isn't a moment that makes crystal clear that the only way we can do this is to think about everybody, that this is it, you know, so I'm just so appreciative. You know, I just feel like the old guy who's already passed the baton, and the people that I have running are the best. So I just want to know how much, you know, I just love all you guys so much. And
we love you
thank
too.
You. It's been
Deeply.
Great. Okay.
Thanks to everybody who joined.
Bye-bye. Thank you for everybody.